Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Inside the Mind of Miles, which is part of the Field of 68 Media Network. And I'm proud to be welcomed by the co-founder of the Field of 68, Jeff Goodman. And that will be the last time you ever hear me say I'm proudly associated with Jeff Goodman in any way, shape, or form. Hi, Jeff.
Inside the mind of Miles. What a scary, scary thought that is. But I'm honored to be on the first podcast to kind of help out. You're going to replace me with somebody a whole lot better, hopefully going forward. But no, this is great. This is great. And it's going to be a great pod because you're going to be you. And there's nobody like you, period.
Well, thank you, I guess. But, we're going to have a lot of fun. And it's just been, I'm fatigued out, Jeff. I'm like, with all this, just everything, the political climate and all the divisiveness, and of course the pandemic, I'm really excited to enjoy something, have some fun, and look forward to visiting with people about great things and fun things and tell stories. And that's what we're going to do. And I appreciate you and Rob Doster thinking of me to be able to maybe pull this off and charge hard through the country at what we're trying to do here. But, I'm just kind of hoping we have basketball.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing right now. I mean, listen, as we record this, recently, the Orlando events, the ESPN events have been scrapped for the most part, other than Champions Classic and Jimmy V, and they're going to hope to put those in another site, probably Indy. But everything was scrapped. And really the reason, Tim, just came to light over the last week or so, which is basically based on positive tests in the past. And some schools, Big 12 and SEC schools, they've got no protocol. If somebody tests positive, they don't have to test again for the rest of the season.
Forever, was what I've heard.
Forever, for the rest of the lives.
Yeah.
Where your old conference, the Big 10, is far more strict. So is the Pac-12 and I believe the ACC. And they're saying we're going to go by the CDC recommendations and guidelines, which are after 90 days, you have to retest. A lot of those teams from the Big 12 and SEC didn't want to go to Orlando because the Disney rule is you have to test after 90 days, and they don't want to be shut down for 2 weeks if one of their players who's already tested positive in April, May, or June tests positive again with maybe a small trace of it or whatnot.
Yeah, it's understandable on everybody's behalf. What I've heard too are some of those schools that are in Orlando may host their own pod. Yeah. And try and just pull 3 or 4 teams in for a mini weekend. Or a long weekend, maybe I should say, and get a few games in that way. I'm curious. I know Nebraska right here is talking about holding a bubble, so to speak. And
there's no bubbles, first of all. Let's not use the word bubble because bubble's a complete BS word. The NBA had a bubble. They spent, I don't know how many millions of dollars to do it. Nebraska doesn't have that money. They got good money, but not that money.
Yeah, greater than a couple million. And but when you look at this, it's going to be fascinating to see how these things come off, how many hiccups we're going to have throughout the season where, all right, what is this? So I have close contact with my friend. He tests positive, but I test negative. How many days am I out? Am I out 2 consecutive tests? Am I out 10 days? It can really, we're already seeing this in football with the Wisconsin starting quarterback testing positive, and the backup has tested positive. And their original starter hurt his foot and had surgery, so they could be on their 4th string quarterback. And I have some eligibility left. I don't know that I could get into Wisconsin.
Listen,
but
the good thing is there's like 10 quarterbacks in every roster. 5 of them red shirt anyway. Just pull them out of their red shirt. Here's my question to you: what do you do right now if you're the NCAA or these conference commissioners? Are you at a point, Tim, where you say, hey, listen, let's just go conference play, forget about the non-conference, let's make sure we get in 15, 20, even as many as 24, and we start November 25th, and we got all this time to be able to pull it off if games are canceled or whatnot?
I think one thing for equality, because of the different number of conference games you play, I would like to see a reduction of the non-conference play. For instance, if you're in the Big 10 playing a 20-game schedule, you say, listen, you get 3 conference games, okay? And if you're in the Big 12 where you only get 18, or I'm sorry, not 18 games. 18 conference games. I'm sorry. Then you get 5 games. You know what I mean? So we have this kind of measure of the same amount of games. And let's face it, it's going to be based this year on how well you do in your conference play. It's really going to be fascinating on what happens to the 3 or 4 teams, on that bubble that are mid-major or high major middlings. I've been part of that, discussion, who deserves it, who doesn't. And as I look at it, that's just a tough call to make. And they've been making them for years, but the proof will be in the pudding. The Northern Iowas of the world, with a guy like AJ Green, I would love to see them in the NCAA tournament.
Oh,
they were there last year, but they were, Ben Jacobson was worried. Do we have enough girth in our schedule? And that's only going to make those guys a little more worried. But I would prefer the NCAA came in and said, listen, here's the deal. Okay, let's do the math. And we're looking at 23 games. We're looking at a 23 game schedule. You fit in that preseason, however you can do it. And hopefully the games are good enough. But
I like the back-to-backs, Tim. I think all the leagues, even the big boys, should go back-to-back, play the same team twice. I do. I know it's not going to be fair. I get it. But aren't we just trying to get to 20 games at this point if we could? Any way we can?
So, yes. And in the old North Central Conference, it was like this. So when I was at North Dakota State, they used to play their rival North Dakota. And they play them 4 times a year.
Wow.
4
times.
Okay? Twice at home.
Yeah.
Friday, Saturday. A month later, twice up at their place, Friday, Saturday.
I like that.
How many fist fights happened on that last Saturday? Each other 4 times, it's like the old Eastern Conference
Michigan
Finals.
State, Michigan 4 times. Give me it. I'm not going to be bored.
Yeah, no, you won't be. And I just think that it's such a unique time. We have to make some decisions that aren't going to be never ending. This is not the way it's going to be for the rest of the time, but this thing is not under control. Like it is, we have our biggest numbers, North and South Dakota, where I'm from, have their biggest numbers ever per capita. They're 1 and 2 in the world or whatever it is. And Nebraska's numbers aren't great. And when you look at this is not going away
anytime soon.
By the time we start playing basketball, like it's still going to be,
a shit show. I call it a shit show, Tim.
I've heard you say that. Thank God I don't curse. So I
can't curse in your pod. Are we going to have to bleep me out?
And I think this might be your last
appearance. This is
your
it.
last appearance.
It's a one and done.
Why? Because I got somebody better than you. I got somebody better than you coming up next.
All right, so let's talk more about your podcast now.
Yeah.
As we bring in your first guest here in a little bit, what is your podcast going to look like? I mean, are you going to we're going to have some coaches, what types of conversations are we going to see?
It's going to be the best one ever. I've been watching the political, and I know what to say. It's going to be the best one ever, the greatest one of all time.
Okay.
And
nothing like setting the bar low.
Yeah. So it's going to be the greatest podcast of all time. So I'm very proud of that. I'm very proud of all the work I've done to make this the best podcast. I've already put in 30, 45 minutes of work on it. So and I can see greatness a mile away. So I'm very confident of that. We're going to talk to coaches. We're going to get to know coaches. We're going to talk a little bit of schematics about their playing style or whatever. We're going to tell stories about recruits or whatever it might be, and give some people some background information and hopefully shine a light on some guys. For instance, Fran McCaffery, I Googled him to get an image, and every one is him flipping out, screaming at somebody, losing his mind. And if you've ever met Fran McCaffery, he's actually a very low key, easygoing dude. And
until you put him in that coach's box.
Well, once you light the fuse, he's, like I say in the podcast, he's not a Roman candle. He's the finale of the 4th of July. Once that fuse is lit, it's gone. And it's really a great show. So, obviously there's that, but really I want people to know Fran and his story. I like to, tell about there's first of all, if you're an Indiana or a Notre Dame fan, a college basketball fan, if you're a Philadelphia guy, a Delco guy, if you're whatever, it is out there, Iowa, Big Ten, you name it. We're going to talk about it during this podcast. And because, it's just amazing, when you look at someone's trajectory. And I expect every episode to be like that. I expect us to have some fun with fans. I expect us to do some,
is there any way we can open the pod with a video of you falling down?
No.
We need that.
Yeah, that's the video that won't go away. It won't die. It won't die.
It will not ever die. Listen,
it just won't die. That was a great moment. It was a shining moment. And
listen, it definitely highlighted your athleticism.
So what it showed was, you remember the ABC Wild World of Sports when we were kids?
Of course.
And they had the agony of defeat.
Yes.
But I won the damn game.
Except those guys were doing like these huge jumps off like mountains.
Oh yeah.
You were just walking through a tunnel.
A little bit different. Just a smidge.
Is it that much?
Yeah. Well, it was higher than you think. You had to get up over that thing. And, but I will tell you this, that the next day after we beat Maryland in the Big Ten tournament, there was 8 cameras waiting on me. It wasn't just one guy.
That's right. Everybody wanted to see if you could pull it off again.
Yeah. So I just did a little bunny hop over it, and that worked great.
Man. Well, listen, subscribe to Tim's podcast, The Mind of Miles. It's going to be absolutely outstanding. Much better after my appearance.
The greatest ever.
This will be it. But you got a great show coming today with Fran McCaffery, Iowa head coach, and every single week inside the Mind of Miles on the Field of 68 podcast. So get to it, Tim.
It's a lot of fun. There's a lot of great content out there right now. Can't wait till we actually get games to really blow it out of the water. Thanks, Jeff. Thanks for having me on. And folks, now we're gonna throw it to Fran McCaffery from the University of Iowa and myself talking hoops. Ladies and gentlemen, we're back with the Mind of Miles podcast, and I'm here on a Zoom call with the Fran McCaffery. Coach McCaffery, I think, is one of the more underrated coaches in the entire company, or in the entire country, and he has got a great squad this year at the University of Iowa. Fran, Coach McCaffery, thanks for coming on the show.
It's great to be with you, Tim. Looking forward to this.
Yeah, well, I started small college and worked my way up as a head coach, and you were a head coach at a young age. I was 28. You were the head coach at Lehigh, correct? At how old?
Correct. 26. Yeah.
And you were ready for that.
Well, I thought I was. I don't know if I was or not, but it was one of those things, as you well know, Tim, in coaching, sometimes the opportunity comes at a time when you're not sure it's coming. We had an opportunity. My head coach left to be the head coach back at my alma mater, the University of Pennsylvania. Tom Schneider got that job. I was thrilled for him, and we were building something at Lehigh, and they gave me a shot, and I will always be thankful for that opportunity from Lehigh University.
Well, and you're never quite ready for that first job, are you? I remember every time I go out, I had 2 student assistants, basically, a volunteer and a student assistant at Mayville State. And the young student assistant says, "Coach, are we ready?" And I said, "No, it was the very first game." And I said, "Let's just pretend like we know what we're doing." And I did that for 24 years. But then you went to work for Digger Phelps at Notre Dame. And did he have as many highlighters? Was he into the highlighters then? Or tell me about working for Digger.
Oh, when I first went there, he was really locked in to coaching at that time. We had just recruited. So right before I got there, we had recruited the class with LaFonso Ellis, Elmer Bennett, Damon Sweet, Keith Tower. We had Joe Frederick, Keith Robinson there at the time.
Life is all about timing, isn't it, Fran?
we had a lot of talent. So I really think he was thinking Final Four national championship. But the thing that was interesting about Coach Phelps is, he's a different kind of thinker. His mind is always going, and so he was a painter. He was on the national committee for stamps. He was like, you'd be sitting there and George Bush would call him on the phone, and then Tommy Lasorda would call him on the phone. He was really one of the most popular people in sports, and you learn from him. What he got me to do was really kind of understand the position more so than just being a coach. He was involved in so many different things. And I think it was pulled in a lot of different directions, but handled that well. And a lot of that pressure fell on us to kind of keep everything going. And that's great preparation for becoming a head coach. And I had been one, but I didn't recruit nationally. And I wasn't preparing scouting reports in the East Coast Conference to try to beat Bobby Knight and Dean Smith and Mike Krzyzewski. So it was a big step for me. And I was very thankful for Coach giving me that opportunity.
You've got a great family. Margaret, of course, is a player at Notre Dame, and you've got 4 children, correct? 3 boys and a girl?
Yes. Fortunately, 2 of them play for us, Connor and Patrick. And, Connor had a terrific season last year. Patrick will step up, and he's really looking good.
Of course, folks, I want you to know that I invited myself to Fran's house to recruit Patrick and some of these other guys, but he just won't give me his address. So the home visit didn't go as well as I'd hoped. But, hopefully he's at least giving the kid a scholarship or some extra meal money on the side.
I probably give him a car.
Yeah, there it is. I think they get a car when they get a license, for crying out loud.
Exactly.
So tell me this, Connor is an excellent baseball player in his own right. And originally I didn't know if he was going to play basketball. And I know his first year we played against him when I was still the head coach in Nebraska. I thought, he's okay. But as I watched him, I think years 2 and 3, I was more and more impressed with him, his level of toughness. And guys seem like they rally around him. And sometimes being a coach's kid is really tough, but these guys seem to gravitate toward Connor. And he looks like a real, spark and a person that I think – I remember watching your Minnesota game, and you played without C.J. Frederick. And so, I think some people thought, well, I don't know if I was going to win this one. And you guys just Luka Garza was in foul trouble the whole game, gutted it out. And I think Connor's toughness and leadership was a big deal about this. And I don't want you to just go bragging on your son. As an analyst now out of coaching, and even as a coach, I really respect that in Connor and thinks he can bring his lot to your team. I'm sure you concur.
Well, there's no question. And I thought, first of all, I appreciate those comments, and so does he, coming from a guy that I've known a long time and respect, but also, from a professional standpoint. You were an analyst last year. That was your job. And it was interesting. After the Michigan State game, Tom Izzo pulled him aside and said, I think you're one of the most improved players in our league. Yep. I really have a lot of respect for what you do. And it's funny how it all happened, Tim, because we started the season with Jack Nungy starting at the 4 spot.
Yeah.
He blows me out.
Huge lineup.
And then Jordan Bohannon plays 10 games and he has his second hip surgery. So, our roster is dwindling. And, so we moved Connor. He was at the point until Jordan was ready. And then Jordan was moved back into the starting position. We moved Connor to the 4 spot. And then he would play the 1, the 2, or the 3 at various times. So I think a lot of the respect that you're referring to comes from the fact that he's got incredible knowledge for the game. So what he does is when he speaks, he'll get them together and they'll, sometimes Connor, where do I go? And he's always telling them where to go. But he has a competitive fire that's really unique and one you hope to find in all of your players, certainly in your children. But I mean, like he's a nasty dude on the court. He'll fight anybody.
Oh, he about killed James Palmer one day. Out of his arm. Palmer couldn't shoot for 5 minutes, and somehow we went from up 3 to down 8.
Well, he's 215 pounds. He's
lean,
very low
strong.
body fat, lean and strong, and that helps him on the baseball field too. So, I think like yesterday he was at baseball. I think he'll be at basketball today.
Well, that's awesome. That's an awesome story. And of course, Patrick, he's going to write his own story. Cancer survivor, and as he, last year you had the luxury of redshirting him, even though you were shorthanded. I almost laugh when you say I'm shorthanded, and you've got a top 50 guy in the country sitting on the bench redshirting. Tough break for you, Coach. But let's talk about some of these dudes. Jordan Bohannon, one of the most dangerous point guards in the country, really, really excellent passer, unlimited range, and a potential player of the year. And let's just get to the elephant in the room here. Luka Garza, great job recruiting him. Wonderful kid, great story. And those 2 guys, I'm guessing Jordan is close to full health. You don't have to get into that too deep, but those 2, are great building blocks, plus that leadership a guy like Connor brings, and then all these other guys.
Well, I think when you look at it, and you've been in this business a long time, there's just no substitute for having veterans. Jordan's in his 5th year, Luka's in his 4th year. Both are leaders. I think it was interesting to hear you talk about Jordan's playmaking ability, because I think a lot of times people just say, well, he's one of the best shooters, and very well maybe the all-time leading three-point shooter in Big Ten history when he's done. So you think of him as a shooter, but his ability to push the ball in a break and find people and load his shooters up and load Luka up is really impressive. And that probably this fall has been the best part of his game. Luka, every time you think he's done, he just keeps getting better. I mean, this guy, as we know, is one of the hardest workers, maybe the hardest worker I've ever coached. He's always in the gym. He's always in the weight room. He's always watching film. But every time, he looks at his own game, he figures out how to get better. And I think what you're going to see this year, Tim, is a guy that's really effective from three-point range. He's the best low-post offensive scorer in the country, and I'm equally comfortable. And you remember that game, we ran a play for him late to shoot a 3, and he cut it to 1.
Yep.
We
Didn't
have
he
that.
miss one like a minute or two earlier and then made the next?
Came right back and made it.
Yep.
We went right back to him. And I told him, that's exactly what I told him after the game. I said, we ran one for you. You missed it. We came right back to you.
Yep.
And so, as you all know, as being a coach, if the coach doesn't have confidence in you, you're never going to have confidence in yourself. So I think that's one of the important things that we try to employ.
Yeah, he is one of the more impressive kids. And I'll tell you where you have helped him as a coach is, he was what people, I think, maybe, I don't know, thought maybe he was slower and wasn't, as mobile. But when he runs north and south, and you guys with your transition, I don't think people realize how fast Iowa plays. They are down the floor, and Luka Garza runs the floor, and he'll put another guy on his butt. And it creates driving lines, it creates penetrate and pitch, and it creates layups. And of course, point to post, Jordan Bohannon, quick pass inside, and holy cow, it puts you guys put a tremendous amount of pressure. People, I don't know, they think, oh, big smash mouth Big Ten. There are some fast teams in the Big Ten. Michigan State is really fast. Even Illinois is fast now. Fred Hoiberg is going to play fast at Nebraska, and you guys are probably the fastest of all of them. And I'm probably forgetting I can't even name all the Big Ten teams anymore. Hey, Coach,
there's more than 10.
Well, so I got to just tell – and so you guys have really helped him with his running. But I had 2 kids one time, and one kid was from Kansas City, and I said, hey, young man, I said, how many teams are in the Big 12? And he goes, 12? I said, no, 10. I asked another kid from Illinois. One kid was Kansas City. How many teams are in the Big 10? And he goes, 12? I said, no, 14. These kids didn't even know how many damn teams are in the league. And they were both top 100 recruits. So, you just never know. And it's the craziness. And the Big Ten is certainly nuts.
Well, the thing with Luka, you talked about the running, Tim. We kind of viewed him when he first got there because we had Tyler Cook still.
Oh, yeah.
Tyler's going to run to the rim, and Luka's going to be the trailer because he can shoot. And, it was interesting when Tyler left, he said, Coach, I got that spot. I'm going to be the first post down every time. And you're right. People look at him and they think he's not real fast. But if you watch the games like you do, he's the first guy down every time. He outruns whoever lines up next to him. He outruns the guy. And part of the reason is he runs as hard as he possibly can every single time. And you and I both know. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on in the game, and that's a hard thing to get guys to know and understand. And he does it.
Oh, yeah. And by the way, he's running, and little Joey Weiskamp at 6'6" is running to the corner, and this guy's running the corner. And, you talked about earlier Joe Frederick at Notre Dame, a young guy you coached, reminded me. So Fran coached Joe Frederick, and, of course, C.J. Frederick is his nephew, who really came on strong as a freshman last year. Funny story, I made a home visit to C.J. Frederick, and his mom and dad were there. And, of course, I said, I have to tell you guys, I was at the Catholics versus Convicts game in 1988, the 31-30 Miami Notre Dame game. And CJ's mom went up and got a Catholics versus Convicts shirt,
Yep.
which her husband didn't even know she had. She had been stashing it, hiding it from the rest of the family for years. So
Yep.
that's how we didn't get him and you got him. I just want you to know I created this internal conflict, And
Yeah.
great family.
Well, Uncle Joe, actually Chuck.
Chuck was a good player, lower level, but a good player.
But Chuck said, "Oh man, it's like the Catholics versus convicts," and then he didn't really want to.
Yeah.
He didn't really want that quote attributed to him, and Joe just went and took it and put it on the shirt, and they sold so many of those things.
Well, I was there, and they were going for $200 a T-shirt, and I was a college kid. I had $20 in my pocket.
Sorry, I didn't see you. I was at that game too. That was my first year. So my first year at Notre Dame, we went undefeated in football and won the national championship. So I went to all the games. That was so much fun. That team was special.
That's funny. That's what I said too. We went undefeated and won the national championships. Yeah, you and I were on the same team. I grew up Irish Catholic. You know how it goes.
Yeah.
But your career, you went to Wake Forest, and then you went back to the University of Penn and had great success in your own right compared to Magic Johnson. That's a pretty cool deal, isn't it?
Yeah, the interesting thing about that, when coming out of high school, I was fairly convinced I was going to be an NBA player, and so I wanted to play in the ACC.
So times have changed like you wouldn't believe. Yeah. I mean, just players have changed, folks.
Well, thinking about that, I mean, when I went and played in the ACC, how many teams there were in the ACC at that time?
8.
7. Georgia Tech wasn't even in the league yet. So it was the 4 teams in North Carolina, Maryland, Virginia, and Clemson. So that was it. So I went down there to play. It didn't work out the way I'd hoped, but more importantly, I recognized, okay, I'm not going to play in the NBA. Okay, now I know for sure I'm going to have a nice college career. I'm going to love the journey, but so I transferred back to an Ivy League school. I said, look, if I'm going to transfer, like a lot of people transfer for athletic reasons. Now, athletics played a huge part of it. I wanted to go to Penn. I wanted to play for Coach Weinhauer. My first year at Penn, we went to the Final Four in '79. So it wasn't like we didn't have good players.
Beat DePaul in the second round?
No, we played DePaul in the consolation game. We lost to Michigan State, and Indiana State beat DePaul, and then they still had the consolation game in those days. It was a 96-93 overtime game. But I was
didn't give you his
a
best
redshirt member. What's that?
Mark Aguirre didn't give you his best punch?
Well, you know what? We got behind by a zillion, came back and took the lead, looking we were going to win, and then we lost. Sometimes that was one of the best games because literally was no pressure, just 2 teams hooping. People barely even knew it took place, so much so that they canceled it, as you know. They don't even play it anymore. But I learned a lot from that team because I was a redshirt member of that team because I had to, sit out. And got a degree from the Wharton School of Business, played for Coach Weinhauer, played in 2 NCAA and 1 NIT when I became eligible, and just incredibly fond memories of the University of Pennsylvania.
As a coach, we get to go coach in all these really cool places, and the Big Ten's full of them. The Big Ten leads the attendance, 45 years in a row, and every arena you go into is just awesome, right? But the Palestra has to be one of the neatest venues. I never had a chance to coach there, obviously play there either, but that has to be a pretty cool experience.
Well, what was really neat about it is, I grew up, my parents took my brother and I to the Palestra every Saturday for years. And I just would watch the Big 5 teams play, and you never know if you're going to get a chance to play on that floor. So not only did I get a chance to play there, we practiced there every day. I lived literally right next door to the Palestra. I lived in a room connected to Franklin Field, which is the football stadium. And so I was in there all the time. The intensity and the atmosphere in that building, it's an old place, classic. Of course, we played Penn State there last year. It was a phenomenal game. It was hot. It was unseasonably hot. There's no air conditioning in the Palestra. It was built in 1926.
Yeah.
And they had to wipe the floor down because the floor was getting moist. They brought fans in. Guys were dying. but it was an absolute war because the place was completely packed and the sound reverberates throughout the building. But every game we played was just like that. And I told my guys, I said, we're going to go do this. You got to understand what it's going to be like. And I don't know that I was able to thoroughly explain to them.
Yeah, you can't.
It's funny, but I was talking to Joe Wieskamp's dad recently, and he said, that was one of the most fun games I think I've ever been to. Yeah. And we lost. We almost won. It was a great game. Yep. 9,000 lead changes. But again, part of what playing in the Big Ten really is.
Okay, Coach, I got just a few more things for you. One of my favorite things is to think about how guys first meet. And you and I first met a couple different ways. First of all, we had a mutual friend, Scott Barber, who has a great apparel design shopping line online, and he died in a car accident recently. And
so sad.
One of the greatest
people I've ever known.
Yeah, and
ironically, I was wearing his clothes before I got to know him. I used to buy all his clothes back when I was a head coach at Siena. The local men's store carried all Scott Barber stuff, and I had a ton of it. And then come to find out when I get this job, he used to be a camper at Tom Davis's camp.
He's from
Iowa. His sister lived up the street from me, so we became really good friends. And of course, you and I used to laugh about it all the time. We used to say we were the two best dressed coaches in the league.
No doubt.
We wore all of Scott's stuff.
Yeah, Scott settled in Loveland, Colorado. So when I was in the Colorado State job, he took care of me, and Buzz Williams was another guy, and Jerry West wears his stuff for crying out loud. So I'm like, I know that check. I know where Jerry got that check. That little plaid look. So so you and I met, and I don't know if you remember, but my son was making his first confession, his first reconciliation. Right. And I was late. I was supposed to meet you for something, and I was late. And you're like, Miles, what's going on? Why are you late? And I'm like, Gabe was in there forever, man. It was like a 10-minute confession.
Why was he in there so long? I remember you saying that.
You're like, what is he doing? Are you a parent? That was the pregame talk, folks. If you wonder what coaches are talking
about, what we talk about, we were talking about your son's first confession and how long he was in there. I remember that. Yes.
Yeah, that was great. Well, then the other thing, and we're just going to go a little true and false here for you. And you can expound later, but you just got to answer the question and we can talk about it later. True or false? Better player, Margaret or Fran? Your wife or you?
Margaret.
Who's better?
Margaret.
Yeah, smart. She's an excellent player.
She only scored 1,000 more points than I did.
Was she? Was she a Cretan girl?
She was a top 25 player in the country. She was an All-American. She was the captain of the first Notre Dame women's team to make the NCAA tournament.
Wow.
Well, I would have a hard time saying myself because she scored 1,000 more points than I did.
Well, just that one little deal. I mean, you got benched at Wake Forest. It's not right. It's not right. So, true or false? Let's go 2 Big Ten meetings right here. 2 Big Ten meetings. Let's do the easy one first. True or false? My very first Big Ten meeting, you and Bo Ryan had what I would call a brouhaha. True or false?
True.
So, folks, what we have to talk about is at the time, there was no rule against interconference transfer, and a player had transferred. And as I'm sitting there, Fran and Bo Ryan get a little heated and voices rise. And, of course, Fran, first of all, some people say you've got a temper, and I don't think you do. I think that once you decide to light your fuse, it's going full fireworks. It's the good firework too. Rolling freaking candle. Like you are Monty at the 4th of July, the finale. So, but what people don't understand is, like, as a coach, you've talked yourself out of acting like that 20 times previously. I mean, at least I have. I feel like I'm doing a good job if I only lose my mind once or twice a game. But so Fran and Bo have this brouhaha, okay? And well, let's just face it. Fran stands up and yells across the room. Bo's yelling back, and it's an argument. It's a legitimate. Jim Delaney's there, and everybody's and I'm sitting next to Tubby Smith, and I'm just, my eyes are this big. You know what I mean? I'm like, Coach Smith, Tubby, are all these meetings that way? And he goes, oh, man. I said, are you going to say anything? He goes, I'm too old for this shit. I'm too old for this shit.
Tubby wasn't getting involved in that.
Oh no. So, and then Tubby says, now, Timmy, you should have been in the old SEC meetings. Like, you should have been in those meetings. Like, we had security. And so
everybody used to talk about the meetings in the Big Ten. You know, we talk about this situation, but they said you should have been here when Knight used to come to these things.
Oh,
You can only imagine.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
So that's true. So true or false? Every 2 or 3 years, the head coaches of the men's team and then the football and then women's basketball have to meet with the ADs. They have a joint meeting. So the meeting, there's usually one big powwow, so to speak, one big group meeting of the faculty athletic reps, which are professors on campus, lawyers, whatever, all these well-educated people that look out for the faculty and the welfare of the student athletes and all the integrity issues, you know, that they don't think coaches really care about. And then the athletic directors are there, of course, at the same time, and the coaches. And true or false, would you or would you have not maybe got upset and spoke up and said, I don't know about you, but I went to the Wharton School of Business at Penn. And I'm sitting next to, I don't know, it was like Richard Pitino or whoever, and we're elbowing each other, just giggling our butts off because they were kind of talking down to us a little bit, you know. And is that true or false? Did you maybe reference your credentials?
Well, it's most definitely true. The interesting thing about that particular meeting, and you're right, Tim, I think I'm pretty tolerant, but sometimes I get to a point where, okay, I'm upset to where I have to actually say something or do something. And it was one of those times. I thought, if you remember, Matt Painter presented for us at that particular
meeting. Did an outstanding job.
Matt's as professional as they come. He's bright. And we were talking about some issues. And that particular group on that day treated us what I thought was incredible disrespect.
Yeah, I was ready to leave within about 20 minutes.
Yeah, I mean,
I went to an NAI school.
Completely disrespected. You know, you guys are the enemy. We're the gatekeepers. And it's kind of like we're missing the target here, you know.
Yeah.
So I was the one that said, you know, there's a lot of educated people in this room. I said, I have a degree from the Wharton School of Business. There's a lot of places I could be. This is a complete and colossal waste of my time. And everybody, I said, you know, I'm hungry.
Everybody's time.
Let's just go to lunch because this is a waste of time. Because whatever we say, you're going to disagree with. We're trying to tell you, we're the ones in the trenches. Listen to what we're telling you. We were actually arguing against a rule that helps our league more than anybody else because it was not in the best interest of the student athlete.
Yeah, they wanted to put in something.
We were arguing, and they wanted to fight with us on it. I said, well, if you want to fight with us on it, then let's not. This is a waste of time. Let's leave. So, and they had a spread for us right outside the door. So
a great spread. It was worth going. You know, and folks, what you have to understand is that there's, you know, any league has a bureaucracy, so to speak, and every coach at every conference I've ever been in, when they go to coaches meeting, feel like they're not going to listen to us anyway. They don't listen to us. And quite frankly, pretty happy to see Craig Robinson with the NABC. That's a big voice for the coaches. They do a lot of great.
Terrific guy. And one of my favorite people in the business, Craig Robinson.
Terrific. Yep. And Michelle Obama's big brother or little brother, I think little brother maybe. And of course, with that, some of those things, the NABC is Coaches versus Cancer, of which Fran and his family being touched by cancer have also done an outstanding job raising money, participating in events. I've had a chance just to be a part of some of that, and it's really cool. You know, coaches stand for a lot more things than just you yelling on game day, and that's what's pretty fun and pretty cool. And I just want to thank you for being on my premiere. You know, and
well, I'm honored to be on it. I wish you luck with it. Knowing you the way I do, it's going to be tremendous. It'll be a first-class situation. Your knowledge, your expertise, and I think also your sense of humor, which I always appreciated. Sometimes in our business, Tim, we all take ourselves way too seriously. And you knew when to coach hard and you knew when to be competitive, but you had fun. You kind of enjoyed the journey. I always appreciated that about you. I try to do the same thing. I think sometimes we're perceived differently than how we really are. And I kind of appreciate you pointing that out, especially as it relates to me. because the way I'm talking to you right now is how I talk
way
to
you
most
are.
people most of the time. It's the way I am.
I know.
Occasionally, I'll get a little upset, and the competitive fire comes out, and then we move on.
Yep. I'm the same way. Once it goes, I'm done with it, And so, Coach, I appreciate you. I didn't even make you say we're going to win the Big Ten championship and go to the Final Four. That you said off.
Well, we're going to try, that's for sure.
I know you will. Iowa fans, have a blast. Coach Fran McCaffery, thanks for coming on.
Timmy, it's always a pleasure, my man. Take care.